Hey everybody, it's time for Chapter 7 of Alienated, and today's shout out goes out to Ben and Luke in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Guys, I hope you're doing really well and you're staying safe and staying indoors and being really helpful to your parents. So let's crack on. Drama King. Okay, Chapter 7, Drama King. Jessica and I half-jogged to keep pace with Octo as the venti tent cruised through the crowd. One tentacle curled up to hold his backpack in place as he navigated the busy hallway. The sights were extraordinary. Chattering creatures, walking, snaking, slithering, hovering, and galloping to their classes. But the sounds were totally normal. The soundtrack of any other school. Keys jangling, locker doors slamming, sneakers squeaking on waxed floor tiles. It was like my eyes and ears weren't part of the same head. You realize you're the only human kids here, right? It was quite a thought. I'd spent a year as the only American boy at an off-base school in South Korea, and I was used to being the only kid interested in rockets and propulsion no matter what school I was in. But being the only human male in the student body made me feel, well, alien. As we walked, dodging jet-powered paper airplanes and the occasional pigskin, the insectoids, reptiles, robots, and creatures that defied conventional classification sized us up. I was used to this walk. I call it the catwalk. I usually hated it, but here it was almost a relief for getting eyeballed because we were descended from apes, and not because our clothes or hair didn't follow a local fashion trend. I decided to treat this like any other first day of school. I'd just try to survive it. "So what's your story?" Octo asked. "Why are you guys at Groom Lake?" "Our story?" gasped Jessica. "You're kidding, right? What's your story, Tentacles?" "I asked first, Lollipop." Octo laughed. "It's just one big geopolitical misunderstanding," I began, trying to change the subject and stop any flirting between the walking squid and my sister. "It's all his fault," she said, jabbing a finger in my ribs. "It's a long, complicated story," I said, "and it's kind of funny when you—" "It's a short, straightforward story," Jessica said, "with a tragic ending." I explained that our dad had been stationed at the NATO base in Germany, and that he'd suddenly been transferred to Groom Lake. "More like grounded in Groom Lake," said Jess. "Just your average, always-on-the-move Air Force brat scenario," I said. "But tell him why Dad got transferred," Jessica said. "Tell him why Dad got demoted. Tell him why we got kicked out of Europe." I looked from Jessica to Octo and back, from Jessica's pursed lips, and "one of these days revenge will be mine" glare to Octo's glassy green eyes and oversized beaks, took a breath, and spilled the beans. "There was kind of an incident," I said. "Involving a missile?" "Involving a rocket," I clarified, "that I built." "Your science project exploded or something?" Octo asked, his eyes widening. "If only," Jessica muttered. "It was a little more advanced than that," I explained. "My rockets are always a little more advanced than that." "So, okay," Octo said, "you're an egghead, but being an egghead doesn't get you kicked out of Europe." "He's a mad scientist," Jessica snarled. "Being a mad scientist who almost starts World War III gets you kicked out of a 2,000-mile radius of Russian airspace." I had to set the record straight. "I'm not mad. Yeah, I like science, but I wouldn't call myself a scientist yet. I'm more like a rocketry savant, a kind of— Ugh, give it a rest, Sherman." "A rocketry what?" Octo asked. "Savant," I said. "Kind of like Mozart, but with boosters and guidance systems instead of violins and sheet music." "I'm not familiar with Mozart," said Octo, "but I'm sure it's lovely." "I have serious misgivings," Jessica scoffed, "about the quality of education we're about to receive here. You don't know Mozart? Beethoven? Bach?" "Nope." "How about Homer?" Octo nodded enthusiastically. "Love, love, love The Simpsons. Hey, how come you guys aren't more, yellow?" Jessica ignored him. "How about Shakespeare? Ever heard of him?" "Oh, man," Octo said, "not that guy. We'll get enough of him in here." The sign above the silver double door said auditorium. Octo curled a tentacle around Jessica's shoulder. Ever tread the boards, baby?" he said before cutting himself off. He'd obviously taken Jessica's sushi threat seriously. "At our last school in Germany," she said, "which I really liked, kind of loved actually, I had the lead in Beauty and the Beast." Octo raised an eyebrow. Aren't you curious which one she was, I asked? But Octo wasn't taking the bait. Good to know, he said to me, open to interspecies dating. I rolled my eyes as Octo turned back to Jess and said, I bet you got a standing ovation. I'll never know, she said. The premiere was last night, in the middle of my opening number when the alarm sounded. Instead of getting a standing ovation, I got sent here, under armed guard, because of him. She shook off Octo's tentacle and marched into the auditorium. What did you do, buckaroo? The silver doors of the auditorium opened again, just a little, and a giant insect poked its head out. Even after a morning filled with surprises, that made me jump. I am Ms. Tegg, and you young thespians are tardy, said the 6-foot winged praying mantis in a black trouser suit. I relaxed as soon as I realized this creature was planning to teach us, not to eat us. She led us into the cavernous auditorium, clicking her high-heeled hind claws and giving her wings a flutter. But let us not keep the bard waiting one moment longer, she announced in a whispery chorus, like 3 people were saying the words. After the cafeteria, I'd expected big things from the auditorium. More glass and chrome and cool lighting, but it was kind of a dump. Threadbare maroon curtains, creaky varnished floorboards, and rows of ancient cracked built-in chairs. Even though it was clean and tidy as everywhere else, the whole room felt neglected and unloved. The rest of the class, a variety of about 20 creatures, mooched around on stage, chatting and texting. I recognized a few of the species from the cafeteria, a potted pansy, a willowy bendy kid, and a tiny snail creature. There was no Sonia to say hello to, but fortunately no Graz or Ned either. Jessica jumped up on the stage, rushed into the center, and smiled. It was the most content she'd looked all day, and I was completely opposite. The whole drama thing gave me the heebie-jeebies. There was something unsettling, unnatural about standing on a stage in front of people, or aliens, pretending to be someone you're not. So I approached the stage as slowly as I could. Earth to Sherman, said Octo, who was still waiting for an answer to his question. What did you do? According to NATO, World War II nearly got a sequel, I said. The Russians tracked the rocket from the airbase into their airspace. All they knew is that it was fired from a missile, fired from a NATO base, heading right for them. I mean, if they decided to fire back, well, we wouldn't be standing here right now. But why did you get shipped to Groom Lake? Octo said. I guess this is where the Air Force hides its secrets. It doesn't want the world to know about, I said, gesturing to the aliens on stage and pointing to him and then me with a shrug. So, no more fireworks? He asked, miming an explosion with at least 15 of his tentacles. According to Article 5 of the settlement, I recited, NATO will hand me over to the Russians to rot in a gulag if I ever touch another rocket. Octo slapped me on the back. Mighty impressive, buckaroo. Boys, less chitter-chatter, Ms. Tegg said. Join your fellow thespians on stage and listen. Octo and I climbed the wooden steps to the stage and watched Ms. Tegg straighten her jacket, take a breath, and begin. Her voices, echoed around the theater, filling the neglected space with iambic pentameter. But soft! What light thou yonder window breaks? Is it the east? And Juliet, it is the east, and Juliet is the sun. It sounded pretty amazing. Even the little gray men guys stopped babbling and listened, and Jessica drank it up, her eyes alight. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief. What was weird, though, was the glow that appeared in the air above Miss Tegg, a spherical, glimmering, little blue cloud, out of nowhere. That thou her maid art more fair than she, but not her maid, since she is envious. The cloud ball thingy was growing arms and legs, and then a head, like a glowing snow angel, hovering in the air. Her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools do wear it. Cast it off. What's that? I whispered to Octo. Who's that? Octo said with a wink. You're gonna love what comes next. And at the time, I had no idea how right he was. Alright, that's chapter 7. Come back tomorrow for chapter 8. Stay safe, stay indoors, wash those hands.